Can a bad race engineer ruin the final stage of a 7-time world champion's career? And more importantly, is Ferrari sabotaging its own resurrection? A few hours before the Brazilian Grand Prix, what were initially rumors has exploded into an obvious reality. There is a critical internal fracture between Hamilton and his race engineer, Riccardo Adami. And this crack not only affects his performance on the track, it is breaking the very soul of the Ferrari project. Adami, who for years was the trusted technical voice for Carlos Sainz, has failed to build any type of synergy with Hamilton. What at Mercedes was a constant, precise and emotionally balanced flow of information with Peter Bonington, at Ferrari has been transformed into a minefield of misinformation, vague comments and tense silences. The radios between the two reveal not only a lack of clarity, but a total disconnection of expectations. Hamilton, accustomed to receiving exact data in real time about the state of the car, the pace of his rivals, key strategic decisions or track risks, now faces evasive answers or worse still, absolute silence. The last straw for many was the exchange during the Mexican Grand Prix. In a moment where precision was vital, Adami communicated a 10-second penalty with an almost robotic phrase, without nuances, without tactical explanations, without offering a plan to mitigate the damage. There was no discussion, there was no strategic calm, there was no leadership. Just a cold sentence. That type of message may seem harmless to those who do not understand the psychology of high competition, but for a driver like Hamilton, who needs to convert every piece of information into millimetric action, that type of communication can be devastating. But this was not an isolated event. In the Monaco GP, another jewel of the communication disaster was recorded. After a race full of inconsistencies in technical information, Hamilton ended up asking on the radio if Adami was upset with him. A question loaded with emotional tension, but also operational desperation. The response was silence. A silence that, inside a cabin at more than 300 kilometers per hour, is not only heard, it feels like a stab. These systematic failures in communication are not just a problem of form. In a sport where a bad decision can cost tenths, positions or even podiums, what is happening between Hamilton and Adami represents a structural threat. We are talking about a pilot with the most successful track record in recent history, faced with the technical weight of an organization that does not seem to know how to operate him. The irony is that, for many within the paddock, this outcome was foreseeable. Riccardo Adami was never known for being a proactive engineer. With Carlos Sainz, it worked because the Spaniard took tactical control of many decisions from the cockpit. It was an unbalanced relationship but functional. Hamilton, on the other hand, comes from a background where his engineer was more than a voice. He was a strategic partner, an emotional shield, an operational radar. Trying to replicate that relationship with someone who does not have that profile has been, from the beginning, a recipe for disaster. In fan forums, this situation has set off alarm bells. Thousands of comments question Adami's permanence at Hamilton's side, with arguments ranging from his lack of initiative to his inability to react under pressure. Some even suggest that this relationship, if not changed immediately, may become one of the most iconic failures in Ferrari's recent history. Because when one of the best drivers of all time starts to feel disoriented in the race, not because of the car but because of the lack of technical guidance, then the problem is not just performance. It is the credibility of the entire structure. And today that credibility is under threat. A relationship between driver and race engineer is one of the most delicate and determining links in Formula One. It is not just about transmitting technical information. It's about building trust in milliseconds, about reading mental states without the need for words, about acting with instinct and surgical precision in an environment where every decision can alter the course of a season. In the case of Lewis Hamilton and Riccardo Adami, what should be a strategic partnership at the highest level has become a failed experiment that threatens to collapse. To understand the magnitude of the problem, it is necessary to analyze what a broken relationship means in the context of modern Formula One. This is not a category where the pilot decides everything, nor is it a discipline completely roboticized by engineers. It is a coordinated dance. Hamilton, throughout his career, developed a fine sensitivity with his cars thanks to constant and effective feedback with his engineer Bono. It wasn't just the quality of the data that mattered, but the ability to filter that information in the race, translate it into practical decisions, all wrapped up in emotionally sound communication. That emotional connection today is completely absent in Ferrari. The disconnection is so deep that former paddock colleagues themselves have come out to criticize the dynamic. Juan Pablo Montoya, in a recent interview, was blunt. That person is not healthy for him, for the team, or for anyone. He didn't say it with anger. He said it with the cold logic of someone who knows how teams break from within. And the most serious thing is that Montoya is not alone. Robert Dornbos, another former pilot, stated that the lack of chemistry is absolute. Even technical analysts like Chandok have pointed out that communication is not only poor but counterproductive. These types of broken relationships rarely end well. They don't fix themselves in time. They are fixed with changes. And that is the point that Ferrari seems to ignore. There is an internal resistance to change, a kind of hierarchical fidelity that prevents Adami from being replaced, despite the damage he is causing. Maranello's historically closed culture seems to repeat the patterns that for years prevented them from returning to the top. They have the car. They have the pilot. But they do not have the humility to recognize that the weak link is in their own structure. The conflict between Hamilton and Adami on its own would be cause for concern. But the most disturbing thing is that this is not an isolated incident or a simple personal incompatibility. It is just the tip of a much deeper iceberg. What is happening inside Ferrari reveals a chronic pattern of dysfunction, a chain of structural decisions that have been sabotaging the Scuderia's competitive capacity from within for years. What in another team would be a specific operational crisis, in Ferrari is a systemic reflection. The leaks that emerged after the Singapore Grand Prix were a turning point. An engineer, under anonymity, revealed that this season's SF25 single-seater has a structural defect in its brake cooling system. This defect was not an accident or an unexpected manufacturing problem. It was a limitation known since the simulation period in Maranello. And yet, by decision of the technical management, they chose to ignore it. Do not correct. Do not redesign. Ignore. These types of decisions are alarming not only because of their immediate technical impact, but because of what they say about Ferrari's internal culture. A culture where pride outweighs correctness and where silence prevails over innovation. During the race in Singapore, the failure was evident. Hamilton, driving on a street circuit with high thermal demands, experienced a progressive loss of braking capacity in the final laps. The sparks coming out of the left front disc weren't just visually spectacular. They were physical signs of a critical failure. The car stopped responding to him in key corners, completely compromising control. In a sport where brake mastery defines the possibility of defending, attacking, or simply surviving on the track, these types of problems are not only technical. They are operational failures that endanger the pilot and his environment. The most serious thing is that this decision to maintain a design with known flaws was not a product of chance. It is a reflection of an entrenched power structure, where decisions are made from the top with a rigidity that prevents adaptation to the data. This type of resistance to change has historically been Ferrari's Achilles heel. Over the past 2 decades, the Scuderia has oscillated between promises of rebirth and self-inflicted failures. And on each occasion, the pattern repeats itself. A lack of self-criticism, a culture that prioritizes hierarchies over results, and a management that hides behind the past to justify present errors. But this crisis also reveals another painful truth. Ferrari, as structured today, is not designed to win championships. You can build a competitive car. You can count on elite pilots. But it lacks the organizational fabric necessary to sustain a high-level campaign. The failures are not only technical, they are cultural. They are structural. They are the consequence of years of political decisions, of internal promotions based on loyalty instead of merit, of watertight structures that do not admit dissent, innovation, or criticism. The result is visible on the track. It is visible in failed strategies, on the radios disconnected, in avoidable mechanical failures, in the lost looks on the pit wall. And even more, it is visible in the frustration of its pilots, who begin to show symptoms of emotional exhaustion, even in public. Ferrari not only needs to change engineers, it needs a silent, structural, profound revolution. And the big question that arises is whether they will do it while they still have Hamilton at the wheel. Or if, as has happened so many times before, they will wait too long, burying another promising cycle under the weight of their history, their pride, and their fear of change. Because if the history of Ferrari in the last 20 years has taught us anything, it is that its worst enemies are not in Red Bull, nor in McLaren, nor in Mercedes. They are in Maranello, sitting in the decision rooms, ignoring warnings, silencing voices, and now, slowly pushing one of the biggest assets they have had in their recent history to the brink of collapse. The conflict between Hamilton and Adami will not be resolved with an apology, nor with a press release. It will be resolved, if anything, with brave decisions. With Ferrari's will to break its internal chains, to act instead of justify, to replace dogma with efficiency. Because time is ticking. Every Grand Prix that passes without correcting course is one less opportunity. In a tough season like this, do you think Ferrari should act immediately and replace Riccardo Adami before this season becomes another tragic page in its history? Or do you think the problem goes far beyond the engineer, that it is a reflection of an internal culture that is no longer compatible with modern success? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.